Case 1. Raven Thompson. Spirit Lake Reservation, North Dakota. The basement was cold. That detail matters, not because of the temperature, but because of the choice. On the night of May 5, 2020, 5-year-old Raven Thompson was placed on a concrete basement floor by the two adults legally responsible for her care. Not because she had done something wrong, not because there was nowhere else, but because, according to investigators, Tammy and Eric Longy Jr. did not want to hear her moaning in pain. The next morning, May 6th, emergency responders arrived at a 3-bedroom house on the Spirit Lake Reservation in North Dakota. They found Raven motionless on that floor. She was dead. Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome to Inside Crime Minds. Hit that subscribe button and drop in the comments. Where are you watching from? What time is it there? What's the weather like? We read every single one. Raven and her 7-year-old brother Zane had entered the Longy household in July 2019. Their biological father had been incarcerated, and the placement was designed to be temporary, a safe landing while the system figured out next steps. Instead, they landed in a house already holding 13 people across 3 bedrooms, 8 of them children. What investigators uncovered in the weeks following Raven's death was not the picture of a single terrible night. It was a pattern. The medical examiner documented bilateral subdural hematomas consistent with repeated trauma, along with bruising and abrasions across her head, neck, chest, abdomen, and extremities. These were not injuries from one incident. They accumulated over time. In a home where 2 children were supposed to be protected, Zane survived, but barely. Responders found him in the back of an SUV parked on the property. He was hospitalized for more than a month, treated for heart failure brought on by severe malnutrition and documented bruising across his body. He was 7 years old. The FBI and Bureau of Indian Affairs agents interviewed Tammy and Eric Longy on May 10, 2020, 4 days after Raven's body was found. The couple was not immediately detained. They left the residence, citing death threats from community members. During that period, Tammy attempted to obtain a firearm. 5 days after Raven died on May 15th, federal agents arrested both of them at a relative's home. Because the crimes occurred on tribal land, the case fell under federal jurisdiction, specifically the United States District Court for the District of North Dakota. Federal statutes governing crimes committed in Indian country applied, which shaped both the charges and the sentencing range. Eric Longy pleaded guilty in March 2021 to first-degree felony murder within Indian country, along with multiple counts of child abuse and neglect. Tammy followed, pleading guilty on January 4, 2022, to second-degree murder and additional counts of child abuse and neglect. Both received life sentences in 2022. Judges rejected mitigation arguments from both sides and granted upward departures from standard sentencing guidelines, citing the severity and sustained nature of the offenses. Eric's appeal to the Eighth Circuit was denied in January 2023. Tammy's appeal followed the same track. As of 2026, both remain incarcerated. Raven Thompson was 5 years old. She had been in that house for 10 months. The questions her case leaves behind are not complicated. They are just unanswered. How does a placement proceed into a home with 13 occupants? How do injuries accumulate on a child over months without triggering removal? The federal prosecution delivered accountability. It did not deliver answers to those questions. And without answers, the conditions that allowed it remain. Spirit Lake failed Raven through a system stretched too thin to see what was right in front of it. But nearly 1,000 miles away in Los Angeles, a different system failed a child who wasn't even 3 years old. And it did so with paperwork that should never have been signed. Case 2. Viola Van Clee, Los Angeles, California. On March 4th, 2010, Kiana Barker called 911 to report that a toddler in her care had stopped breathing. When paramedics arrived at the Los Angeles home, Viola Van Clee, not yet 3 years old, had no pulse. She was rushed to the hospital. She did not survive. The coroner's findings were unambiguous: fatal blunt force trauma, internal bleeding, and bruising distributed across Viola's body in a pattern that was inconsistent with any accidental cause. This was not a fall. This was not choking. The injuries told investigators exactly what had happened, even before Barker opened her mouth. And when Barker did speak, she made things worse for herself. Her account shifted. First, she said Viola had choked on apple juice. Then the story changed. The child had become trapped in a bed frame. Prosecutors would later argue that neither explanation could account for the nature or distribution of the injuries, and that Viola had been beaten the day before the 911 call and left to deteriorate overnight. If you've been watching this far and this is hitting hard, good. Share this video. These children deserve more than a headline. Drop a comment, let us know you're here, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. What made Viola's case particularly damning, not just for Barker, but for the system, was what existed on paper before Viola ever set foot in that home. Kiana Barker had 5 prior child abuse or neglect complaints on record. One of them, dating back to 2002, had been substantiated as severe neglect. Under California's own licensing rules, that history should have disqualified her. Instead, a nonprofit foster agency called United Care approved the placement. Barker's boyfriend, James Ditt Julian, a convicted felon, also lived in the home. Barker operated a daycare out of the same residence. None of it stopped the placement from going through. Barker and Julian were both arrested within months of Viola's death. The case against Barker was built on the medical evidence, the inconsistency of her statements, and the documented history of prior complaints. A jury convicted her of second-degree murder, assault on a child causing death, and child abuse. In February 2014, she received the maximum sentence, 25 years to life. The conviction was upheld on appeal. The California Supreme Court denied further review. As of 2026, Kiana Barker remains incarcerated. Viola's case is not complicated to understand. A child was placed with a woman who had a documented history of harming children in a home that housed a convicted felon through an agency that approved the paperwork anyway. The rules existed. The safeguards were written down. They just weren't enforced. That is the part that should stay with you, not just the crime, but the chain of decisions that made it possible. Every complaint that went unacted on, every box that got checked without anyone looking behind it. Viola Van Clee paid for those failures with her life. California failed Viola through a system that had the information it needed and didn't use it. In Texas, a private agency was about to make the same mistake, with a 2-year-old named Alex. And this time, they had been warned in writing just 1 month before. Case 3, Alexandria, Alex Hill, Texas. On July 29, 2013, Sherilyn Small put a 2-year-old into a timeout. That timeout lasted 2 hours. When it ended, Alex Hill wasn't responding. Small called 911. By the time paramedics reached the hospital, Alexandria Hill had no pulse. Doctors worked to stabilize her. What they found during examination stopped them cold: severe head injuries, bruising on her buttocks, arm, and chin, and medical findings that no accidental explanation could account for. A forensic expert later testified that the pattern of injuries, subdural hemorrhaging and retinal bleeding in both eyes, was consistent with a child being violently slammed head-first into a hard surface. Alex was declared brain dead. 2 days later, on July 31st, she was removed from life support. She was 2 years old. If you're just joining us, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Because what this case reveals about the system that was supposed to protect Alex is something every parent, every voter, every human being needs to hear. Alex had not arrived at Sherilyn Small's home without warning signs preceding her. She had moved through multiple placements before landing there, and across those placements, caregivers had flagged bruising and other concerns. None of it stopped the next placement. None of it stopped the one after that. Small was a licensed foster parent through Texas Mentor, a private agency contracted by the state to place children. Her record was not clean. She had previously failed 5 foster placements. An early childhood intervention program had flagged her as frazzled, their word documented. Her husband carried a criminal history that included drug charges. And in January 2013, 1 month before Alex was placed in her home, a formal warning was issued stating that children should not be placed with Small. Texas Mentor placed Alex there anyway. Investigators built their case on the medical evidence and expert testimony. The forensic findings were specific enough that the cause and manner of injury were not seriously disputed at trial. Small was arrested, charged, and tried for capital murder. In November 2014, a jury convicted her. The verdict carried life without parole. Small appealed. The conviction was affirmed. She died in custody in December 2016 before serving much of her sentence. In the aftermath, Alex's case drew scrutiny directly at the private foster care agency model operating in Texas. Congressional attention followed. Hearings were held. The central question was straightforward. When a private agency is contracted to place children, who is responsible for enforcing the standards that are supposed to keep those children safe? Texas Mentor had the warnings. They had the prior placement failures. They had the January notice. They placed a 2-year-old in that home, regardless. Alex Hill's death was not a gap in the rules. It was a gap in the will to follow them. 3 states, 3 children, 3 systems that had the information they needed and looked the other way. But the next case crosses an ocean, and it didn't involve one person making a terrible decision. It involved an entire family coordinating in real time to make sure the truth never came out. Case 4. Tia Palmer. Queensland, Australia. On the evening of October 31st, 2015, Rick Thorburn was alone in the house with 12-year-old Tia Palmer. The rest of the family had left. 2 days earlier, the Thorburn son, Trent, had confessed via social media to a cousin that he had been inappropriate with Tia. The day before, he had told his mother, Julene. By the time Halloween night arrived, the family knew. And someone made a decision about what to do with that knowledge. Tia never walked out of that house. Tia Alyssa Palmer had been in foster care since 2008. She was placed with the Thorburn family in early 2015, a Queensland couple who ran a daycare business and presented themselves as experienced caregivers equipped to handle children with complex needs. To the agencies involved, they looked like exactly the kind of placement that worked. What was happening inside the home was the opposite of that image. Investigators later established that Trent Thorburn had been sexually assaulting Tia over a period of time. When he confessed to his cousin on October 29th, the message was intercepted as part of the subsequent investigation. When he told Julene on October 30th, the family's response was not to call authorities. It was to manage the situation internally. On October 31st, while Trent and Julene left the residence, Tia was left alone with Rick. Forensic and investigative evidence gathered over the following year pointed to Rick Thorburn as the person responsible for Tia's death. Asphyxiation carried out to prevent the prior abuse from becoming public. Rick then lied to the family. The family then lied to everyone else. What followed was a coordinated cover-up. False accounts were given to police about Tia's whereabouts. The family constructed narratives designed to redirect investigators. They used community relationships and public-facing grief to maintain the appearance of innocence. It held for a while. The investigation cracked open through a combination of intercepted communications, an anonymous tip, witness testimony from within the family's own circle, and forensic evidence that contradicted the accounts being given. In September 2016, all 4 family members were arrested. Rick Thorburn pleaded guilty to murder. He received a life sentence with a mandatory non-parole period of 20 years. Other family members received lesser sentences reflecting their roles in the cover-up rather than the killing itself. Trent's earlier conduct was addressed through separate proceedings. The case triggered a formal inquiry in Queensland. Oversight bodies produced 29 recommendations and secured financial investment in child safety infrastructure. Acknowledgement, at the governmental level, that the system had failed to protect Tia at multiple points before October 31st ever arrived. What the Thorburn case makes plain is something the others reinforce. Abuse that occurs inside a home, behind closed doors, within a family unit that presents well to the outside world, is extraordinarily difficult to detect through standard oversight mechanisms. Background checks don't reveal what hasn't been reported. Home visits don't capture what happens after the caseworker leaves. And when an entire family is invested in concealment, the margin for detection narrows significantly. Tia Palmer was 12 years old. She had been in the care system for 7 years by the time she was placed with the Thorburns. 7 years of the system trying to find her safety. It found her, the Thorburns, instead. Queensland launched an inquiry. 29 recommendations were written. But back in the United States, one woman had studied the system from the inside and used everything she knew to stay one step ahead of it. Her name was Jennifer Rosenbaum, and the child in her care was 2 years old. Case 5. Layla, Ela, Daniel. Georgia, the Rosenbaums. On November 17, 2015, a 2-year-old named Layla Daniel, called Ela by those who knew her, was found unresponsive in a home in Georgia. She was rushed to the hospital. She did not survive. The autopsy that followed described what investigators already suspected: extensive blunt force trauma, internal lacerations, multiple healing bruises at different stages, and injuries that told a story not of one event, but of weeks of sustained harm. Ila's 7-year-old sister Millie was in that house too. She would later testify to what she had witnessed: routine beatings, a pattern of violence that had become, in that home, ordinary. The people responsible were Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum. Drop a comment right now. What state are you watching from? We want to know where our Inside Crime Minds family is tuning in from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button, because this case is one of the most calculated betrayals we've covered on this channel. On paper, the Rosenbaums were exactly the kind of people the system trusted. Jennifer had been in foster care herself as a child. She had gone on to study law at Emory University, one of the most respected law schools in the country. She had interned at a district attorney's office. She understood how the system worked, how cases were built, and where the pressure points were. Joseph worked as a corrections officer. Together, they projected competence, stability, and credibility. That image was the weapon. The placement of Ila and her sister Millie into the Rosenbaum home came with failures stacked on top of failures. Caseworkers classified Jennifer and Joseph as fictive kin, a legal designation that allows placement with individuals who have a meaningful relationship with the child, even without biological ties. The Rosenbaums did not meet the legal criteria for that classification. The designation was applied anyway, bypassing more rigorous screening requirements. Jennifer's background check was run under her married name. Her maiden name, which would have surfaced her own history in the foster care system, was never searched. An unauthorized individual signed off on the home evaluation. Multiple prior foster parents had raised concerns before the placement was finalized. None of it stopped the process. Ila arrived in the Rosenbaum home. The harm began. In October 2015, Ila suffered a severe tibia fracture. Jennifer told investigators the injury had occurred at a gymnastics facility. Investigators later established that account was false. The facility's records did not support it, and the nature of the fracture was inconsistent with the explanation given. A DFCS caseworker conducted a home visit during this period and failed to adequately examine Illa, a direct violation of protocol. The fracture was not flagged as a red flag requiring escalation. The placement continued. 3 weeks later, Illa was dead. The trial that followed was extensive. Millie's testimony was central, a 7-year-old describing in plain terms what she had seen happen to her sister inside that house. The medical evidence corroborated her account at every turn. The autopsy findings, the fracture history, the pattern of bruising at different stages of healing, all of it pointed to sustained, deliberate harm over a period of weeks. Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum were convicted on dozens of counts, including felony murder and aggravated assault. Jennifer received a life sentence plus additional years. Joseph received a lengthy sentence as well. Jennifer appealed. In 2024, the Georgia Supreme Court affirmed her conviction. That same year, a United States Senate subcommittee report cited Illa's death as one of multiple documented systemic failures within Georgia's foster care system, an acknowledgement at the federal legislative level that what happened to Illa was not an isolated incident, but a symptom of deeper institutional breakdown. What Jennifer Rosenbaum understood and exploited was that the system extends trust to people who look trustworthy. A law degree, a corrections background, a personal history in foster care that read, on the surface, as empathy rather than familiarity with loopholes. She knew which boxes to check, which language to use, and how to present a home that passed inspection. The safeguards that existed were not strong enough to see past the performance. Illa Daniel was 2 years old. Her sister watched what happened to her. The system that placed them there had the warnings, it had the protocols, it had the criteria. It failed to apply them. Georgia failed Illa through a system that trusted the performance over the process. In Ohio, the next case didn't involve someone gaming the system from the inside. It involved a 3-year-old boy who was starved, confined, and then made to disappear, and foster parents who thought they had covered every track. Case 6. Marcus Fazel. Ohio. Marcus Fazel was 3 years old. By the time the people responsible for his care were done, he was gone. Not just dead, but deliberately concealed. His foster parents staged his disappearance, destroyed evidence, and constructed a story designed to make investigators look everywhere except where the truth actually was. It didn't work. Marcus had been placed in foster care in Ohio after concerns about his biological family's ability to provide safe care. The placement was supposed to give him stability. Instead, what investigators later reconstructed was a prolonged period of starvation and confinement. A child systematically deprived of food and freedom in a home where the adults were responsible for providing both. The details of Marcus's final weeks, pieced together through forensic evidence and witness accounts, described a child whose condition had deteriorated significantly before his death. He was not receiving adequate nutrition. He was being confined rather than cared for. The harm was not impulsive, it was sustained, deliberate, and hidden from the caseworkers and agency personnel who were supposed to be monitoring the placement. When Marcus died, his foster parents did not call 911. They did not report his death. Instead, they staged a disappearance, creating the appearance that Marcus had gone missing rather than died in their care. As part of the cover-up, they burned portions of his remains. They then participated in the public response to his disappearance, maintaining the fiction while investigators worked the case as a missing child situation. This is the kind of case that doesn't just make you angry. It makes you ask how. How does a child disappear from a licensed foster home and no one knows for weeks? If that question is sitting with you right now, share this video. Because the more people who understand how these systems fail, the harder it becomes to look away. Subscribe if you haven't, and stay with us, because we're not done yet. The investigation turned on forensic evidence. The remains, despite the attempt to destroy them, yielded enough for investigators to establish cause and manner of death. Digital evidence, witness statements, and the inconsistencies in the foster parents' accounts built the case from multiple directions simultaneously. The staged disappearance, rather than protecting them, became an additional layer of evidence. Consciousness of guilt, documented and prosecutable. Both foster parents were arrested, charged, and prosecuted. The convictions carried significant sentences, reflecting both the death of Marcus and the deliberate, calculated nature of the cover-up that followed it. The case drew attention in Ohio to the monitoring gaps that allow a child's condition to deteriorate inside a licensed placement without triggering intervention. The question of how often caseworkers visited, what those visits actually looked like, and whether the documentation matched the reality on the ground. Marcus Fossil was 3 years old. He was placed in a home that was supposed to keep him safe. He was starved, he was confined, he was killed. And then the people who killed him tried to make him disappear a second time, from the record, from the investigation, from accountability. They failed at that too. But the failure came too late for Marcus. Ohio tried to erase Marcus from the record. On the other side of the world, in Bali, a woman tried something just as calculated. She buried her 8-year-old daughter in the backyard, then went on Facebook to lead the search for her. That case is next. Case 7. Angeline Magawi. Bali, Indonesia. The Facebook post went up while the body was already in the ground. Margaret Angeline Magawi posted publicly about her missing 8-year-old adopted daughter, sharing the post, asking for help, appealing to neighbors and strangers alike to keep an eye out for a little girl who, according to her, had simply vanished. People shared the post, people searched, the community mobilized around a grieving mother looking for her child. The child was in the backyard the entire time. The girl, 8 years old, adopted into Magawi's care, had been subjected to a prolonged pattern of physical abuse before her death. Investigators, once the case broke open, documented injuries consistent with repeated harm over time. This was not a single incident that escalated. It was sustained mistreatment that ended in the child's death, followed immediately by concealment. Magawi buried her daughter in the backyard of the family home in Bali. Then she went online. The Facebook campaign was calculated. It created a public narrative, a desperate mother, a missing child, a community tragedy that redirected attention away from the home and toward an invented story. It also created a paper trail that investigators would later use against her. Every post, every comment, every public appeal became evidence of consciousness of guilt. The performance of grief, documented in real time on social media, became part of the prosecution's case. If you're watching this and your jaw is on the floor right now, you are not alone. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. What time is it there? We read every single comment, and this community keeps these stories alive. Stay with us, because the final case in today's video involves foster parents who didn't just run from accountability. They fled the country. Investigators in Bali began to focus on Magawi when the details of her account stopped holding together. The timeline she provided had gaps. Witness accounts from people familiar with the household contradicted elements of her story. When investigators searched the property, they found the child's remains in the backyard, exactly where Magawi had been living, posting, and performing her public search. Magawi was arrested. The case against her was built on the physical evidence from the burial site. The forensic findings establishing cause of death, the documented history of abuse, and the social media record that demonstrated she had been actively constructing a false narrative from the moment her daughter died. She was convicted and sentenced for the murder of her adopted daughter. The case drew significant attention in Indonesia, both for the nature of the crime and for the way social media had been weaponized as a tool of misdirection. A reminder that public grief and digital visibility are not evidence of innocence, and that investigators increasingly treat online behavior as part of the evidentiary record. The child Magawi adopted was 8 years old. She had been brought into a home under the legal and social framework of care. What she received instead was harm, death, and then the indignity of a public lie constructed over her grave. Bali, Ohio, Georgia, Texas, California, North Dakota. The geography changes, the pattern does not. But the final case today takes that pattern one step further. Because when investigators closed in on the people responsible for Serenity Gandara's death in Bakersfield, California, they were already gone. They had crossed the border into Mexico, and they stayed there for years. Case 8. Serenity Gandara, Eston, Bakersfield, California. By the time Serenity Gandara died, the abuse had been going on for months. It was not hidden in the way some of these cases were hidden. There were signs, there were people who knew pieces of the story, and there was a paper trail that investigators would later follow in detail. What there was not, in time to save Serenity, was intervention. Serenity was a young child placed in foster care in Bakersfield, California. The home she was placed in became the site of sustained physical abuse over a period of months, harm that accumulated, that left marks, that should have triggered the kind of response that removes a child from danger. The monitoring that existed did not catch it in time, or if it did not act fast enough. When Serenity died, the cause was the cumulative result of the abuse she had endured. The forensic findings documented the extent and duration of the harm, injuries at different stages of healing, a body that had been through repeated trauma before the final fatal episode. Investigators began building the case immediately, but the foster parents were already moving. By the time law enforcement was ready to make arrests, the individuals responsible for Serenity's death had crossed the border into Mexico. They did not turn themselves in. They did not cooperate. They disappeared into a jurisdiction that required a formal extradition process. A process that is slow, procedurally complex, and dependent on international cooperation between U.S. authorities and Mexican officials. The years that followed were defined by that process. Investigators maintained the case. Prosecutors kept the charges active. Extradition requests moved through diplomatic and legal channels. It took years, not months, before the individuals responsible for Serenity's death were returned to the United States to face prosecution. Before we get to the verdict, if this video has held your attention from Case 1 all the way to here, that means something. Subscribe to Inside Crime Minds and turn on your notifications, because next week we are covering a case that will stop you cold. And share this video, not for the algorithm, not for the numbers, but because Serenity Gandara and every child in this video deserves to have their story heard by as many people as possible. They were failed in life. The least we can do is make sure they are not forgotten. When extradition was finally completed, the case went to trial. The prosecution presented the forensic evidence, the documented timeline of abuse, and the flight to Mexico as consciousness of guilt. The same legal principle that had appeared in the Marcus Fasel case. The same argument that a person who runs is a person who knows what they did. The jury agreed. Convictions followed. Sentencing reflected both the severity of what had been done to Serenity and the years spent evading accountability. Serenity Gandara's case sits at the intersection of two distinct failures. The first was the monitoring failure. The months during which abuse was occurring inside a licensed placement and the oversight mechanisms in place did not intervene in time. The second was the jurisdictional failure, the gap between a crime committed on U.S. soil and the years it took to bring the perpetrators back to face consequences for it. Both failures are systemic. Both are preventable with the right investment of resources, coordination, and political will. 8 cases, 8 children. North Dakota, California, Texas, Australia, Georgia, Ohio, Bali, Bakersfield. Different jurisdictions, different agencies, different perpetrators, but the same thread running through every single one of them. Adults who were trusted with children used that trust as cover. Systems that were designed to protect those children had the information, the warnings, and in several cases, the explicit red flags, and failed to act decisively enough, fast enough, or at all. Raven Thompson, Viola Van Clee, Alexandria Hill, Tia Palmer, Layla Daniel, Marcus Fazal, Angeline Magawi's daughter, Serenity Gandara. These are not cautionary tales. They are not statistics. They are children who were placed into systems built around the promise of safety. And that promise was broken by individuals and by institutions repeatedly and at enormous cost. The legal system convicted the people directly responsible. That matters. Accountability matters. But conviction is the end of one process, not the beginning of prevention. The work of prevention, stronger screening, better data sharing, reduced caseworker caseloads, rigorous oversight of private agencies, and a culture that treats a child's safety as non-negotiable. That work is ongoing. It is underfunded, underprioritized, and invisible until the next headline forces it back into view. These children deserved better than headlines. They deserved the protection the system promised them. Remember their names: